So if you're going to invest in mediation and get it right, it's important to make some changes. These have come from our thinking about nudge and nudging mediation. There's a white paper on our website around using nudge to increase the use of mediation. So first of all, get rid of the term alternative dispute resolution. It makes people think of things that are optional, soft and fluffy, not for your average person, something a little bit wacky, open-toed sandals and lentil knitted jumpers. So reposition mediation as a term in its own right. Talk about mediation and emphasise resolution. Rebrand your grievance procedure as a grievance resolution procedure. Emphasise resolution over grievance. A grievance procedure invites people to grieve. A resolution procedure invites people to resolve. Put mediation in your policies, in as many of them as you can locate. Grievance, disciplinary, dignity, fairness at work, performance management, customer complaints, health and safety, sickness, corporate and social responsibility, recruitment and retention. They all need to have reference to mediation, not just your grievance and disciplinary procedures. Replace this notion of formal and informal. Formal makes it sound serious, credible, legitimate and powerful, and so by implication anything that's informal is seen as casual and soft, optional, really only suitable for someone who isn't serious about their pain and anger. So rename your processes as resolution options rather than formal and informal processes. Okay, it's important to ask people to meet a mediator rather than go to mediation. Allow them to sample, to enter the water, toe at a time. Don't make them commit right up front to the whole process. Just because someone's met a mediator does not mean that they have agreed to resolve their differences through mediation, and it's important that they don't feel that that's a presupposition. All they need to do is meet a mediator who's going to encourage them to take that next step. Include mediation in your staff policy, in your staff surveys. Think about asking about mediation in exit interviews. Instead of just checking out about bullying and harassment and perceptions of that, ask people about their use of mediation, whether it's been done through a mediating manager or a more a trained and official mediation route. Make it really easy for people to contact a mediator. Put numbers on pay slips. Put brochures on, leave flyers on the back of your toilet doors. Leave leaflets in reception. We've got a number of clients who've done fantastic work, including Biz, on promoting their mediation service, and we can happily put you in touch with some of those. There's social contagion around negative conflict, so it's important to increase that social contagion around positive conflict. Make sure that you've got success stories. Mediation isn't about banning conflict or getting rid of it, it's about handling it positively. So, for example, you could set people targets. HR, unions, managers need to see mediation as proper work, properly rewarded. So you could set targets for the use of mediation. Revisit the notion of confidentiality. People know about negative conflicts, and I'm not sure why we're kept in the dark about positive conflict resolution. Confidentiality is a hangover in the UK from the early mediations that were predominantly done here in neighbour and community disputes, and family mediation, where our private life is very private. It's just been brought over into the workplace, and in fact, we need to develop a new policy on confidentiality, which actually celebrates the skills, the attitude of staff who've been able to resolve their differences. You need to calculate the cost of conflict to make a strong business case and demonstrate its use and return to sustain funding and the business case. It's important to put mediation awareness and knowledge in your management competencies, in your matrices. And you could try working with a very resistant group first, get the resistant group on board and turn them from critics to ambassadors, and you'll find your mediation service really starts to have an impact. Make sure that mediation isn't just seen as something for the rank and file. Senior managers need to demonstrate and use those skills. The reports on bullying at work often highlight the influence that senior managers' behaviours have on what's perceived as acceptable. So a consistent message coming from the highest levels will have a really powerful impact. I'm speeding up a little bit here, I've just spotted the time. Okay. There's been a lot of focus on mediation. The government's focused on mediation. It's very much in the ether at the moment. There's a very, very strong case for training managers. If you want to, there's a lot of data that shows training managers in conflict competence is much more impactful than setting up a mediation service in isolation. You know, the data on this slide gives a really strong picture of why training managers has such an impact. It comes from the CIPD, and I'm more than happy to back up the stats that I'm giving you here if anyone wants to contact me for the original sources. So managers do spend a huge amount of time managing conflict, and how they do it is critical. The majority of performance problems come from strained relationships. Managers are often anxious about raising performance. They're fearful of being accused of bullying. People leave their job. They leave their manager, not their job. And so, it's really important that the culture that a manager develops, the way they tackle conflict, the way they behave, is addressed. Because if you want to change your conflict culture, start with your managers. So the Institute of Leadership and Management would agree with that, and they rolled out some short management courses for their members. And the next video is going to show what they did and why they think it matters. So they commissioned us to provide conflict management training that focused on skills and managing day-to-day conflicts.
The reason we collaborated with CMP is because we absolutely believe conflict resolution, conflict management is a core management capability. And in these very stressful times, times are very tough in organisations now. We're competing for resources, we're competing for airtime, and so misunderstandings are often rife. So we need to be able to basically find a way to ensure that they don't escalate, and that's our real concern. How do managers confront this capability and really get to the heart of why conflict is often rife in organisations and manage it appropriately? The feedback we've had from the people who are at the workshops has been very positive. Again, what's made it most impactful is even in a very short workshop, people left with skills, real things that they could make a difference with when they got back to the workplace straight away. The things they told us about what gave me confidence to understand what was really going on, gave me confidence to intervene a bit earlier, because often what we see, managers are quite concerned about the fact, well, should I get HR involved? This is about just giving them the confidence to have appropriate, sometimes robust, but self-aware conversations to nip in the bud misunderstandings that could end up accelerating and then taking an awful lot of management time. I think it's really important that UK businesses learn to manage conflict better and to build that capability in their managers, because there's no doubt that with a diverse workforce, with problems in our organisations as they are, we need different perspectives, and that will often mean that conflict abounds. So if we can ensure that we're managing conflict and get the real advantage out of diverse viewpoints, then we'll really see a positive business impact.
That was okay, so that was the ILM talking about their commitment to training managers. I want to move on now to looking at how conflict competent your business is. The model that we've developed is based on triangles. As a good mediation company, you should always have threes. Most organisations will spend an awful lot of money at the top close layer, whether it's insurances, grievances, disciplinaries, and so on. You can see the items in that red panel. There's a lot of a great deal of expenditure and effort in those closing activities. They will invest some in the manage layer. They might invest in training some mediators or outsourcing mediation, and they'll put very little resource into preventing conflict from arising in the first place. There might be some performance management technical training, how to run appraisals. And the consequence are some of the negatives are shown in that right-hand column. There are visible, measurable impacts and costs, and then there's the human cost. And this is generally well understood that poorly managed conflict is a bad thing for a business. What we recommend is to turn that triangle on its head. Most conflicts should be resolved and can be resolved at that bottom green layer. So you're putting in place really supportive prevention mechanisms, building up the middle layer, putting more effort, more resources into supporting people to manage conflicts when a third party is required. And subsequently, yes, there are going to be cases that need to be formally investigated, but that's much more proportionate to the number of complaints in hand. The cost relative to the overall salary bill goes down for your organisation, and you get significant benefits. So a conflict confidence organisation will have most effort in its prevent layer, which is where most organisations will get long-term value from their training. This is going to stop conflicts from escalating up to the point where they need mediation intervention. Well done, professionally managed mediation, harassment advisors, conflict coaching. If that's all in place in the managed conflict layer, you're going to have fewer cases going up requiring formal action. And the final piece that is so often overlooked when we think about dispute resolution at work is the need to manage formal complaints in a constructive and timely way to try and minimise the negative consequences and keep those appeals to a minimum. The benefits of closing conflicts fairly, constructively, in line with best practice and with legislation are significant and quantifiable. If you implement best practice measures, you can prevent complaints escalating to a tribunal or pre-claims conciliation, and you can ensure that you learn from each and every experience rather than it having a zero gain cost. One of the steps that London Underground took was to make a decision based on the very strong business review that it was better to outsource their investigations to a provider, and CMP were able to take on that contract for them. So we've got our final video, which is London Underground talking about the benefits they have by outsourcing investigations into grievances and disciplinaries.
London Underground introduced a harassment policy back in 2000, which required accredited managers to carry out investigations independently. However, very quickly the organisation realised that the impact of management time resulted in cases taking very long to be concluded. In 2006 there was a tendering process and CMP was successful in securing that tender. There are a number of outcomes which we've been able to actually quantify. First is the average length of time taken to close cases. That's gone down from 180 days on average to 65 days. Secondly is the speed and quality at concluding cases as well. Based on the cost analysis we've done, the total cost to London Underground in terms of case management back in 2005-06 was an average of about £9 million in total. The latest analysis we did, which was back in 2009-10, the cost had reduced to £6 million, which is of gross savings about £3 million at the end of the day.